Number 13 on our Cache Valley Media Group's list of the top 25 Aggie football players is Patrick Joyner. He wears number 0, a junior who transferred to Utah State from the University of Miami, and last year played all 14 games, made 8 starts, and he was number 14 on the team in tackles. But look at the production. 29 tackles made, 7.5 were for loss, and 3.5 sacks, along with 5 quarterback hurries. Not to be a surprise to us, because actually he was a 4-star prospect, the 23rd best prospect at his position, and number 38 in the entire country, according to a couple of the different recruiting services before he went to Miami, where he played in 9 games in 3 years there. But boy, Utah State is grateful to have Patrick Joyner Jr. now playing at the defensive end and attack position. So, number 13 on our list is Patrick Joyner Jr.
Yeah, as Al detailed, the impact player who really got after opponents, impacted what was going on in the backfield. 7.5 tackles for loss for minus 39 yards last year.
Yeah, really good. Obviously, he's going to be a guy that's going to be featured in the defensive attack, and that's weird when you think of this defense. They really attack. You know, I believe they were one of the top teams in tackles for loss last year. I think maybe the top. They just had guys that were always attacking, getting into the backfield. And Joyner was one of those. Like I said, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. You know, despite having, only 29 tackles? That's not very many. Of course, it's a decent amount for a defensive end, a rotation defensive end like he was last year. He'll step up and play a little bit more. He did start a lot of the games last year, but with Nick Henniger, Marcus Moore not being there as much, he'll step into a slightly larger role, potentially be one of the featured guys. Him and the other guy, Byron Vaughns, could potentially be the 2 starting defensive ends. Daniel Grishik's going to be kind of in there. So there's kind of 3 defensive ends that they may be throwing around there and could create a very devastating attack on the edge for Utah State's defensive line.
Yeah, last year, that was one of the position groups that I was concerned about, not knowing really how it was going to develop, how they were going to impact the game. A lot of unknown names. Because even Patrick Joyner, like when he was in Miami, didn't have a lot of stats. Like didn't really produce a lot there, and was one of those cases where take him out of that situation, he comes to a place like Utah State, and he has an opportunity to blossom and flourish. And now this year, Hale Motuapawaka, Byron Vaughns, Patrick Joyner Jr., now Daniel Grishik in the mix as well. That defensive front is going to be a real strength for Utah State, especially when we saw how much more they impacted the game at the tail end of last year. And a lot of those guys are back, and that gets me excited for how they're going to affect opposing offenses this season.
Yeah, it's probably one of the units that you can argue got better this offseason. There's not too many units you can say that about Utah State. Probably their defensive backs, probably a little bit. But others, you look at linebackers, offensive line, running backs, wide receivers, you can maybe say they could be better, but we don't know. The defensive front with all these guys they've got, and Patrick Joyner among them, you could say they got better and will be one of the bigger impact parts of this team.
So Patrick Joyner Jr., number 13 on our list in our top 25 Aggies of 2022.